Resident Evil games are known for their intense action and horror. But can they run on Intel UHD graphics? Stay tuned to find out. First up is Resident Evil 5. This game runs surprisingly well on my laptop with Intel UHD graphics. At 1080p high settings, the game maintains a smooth 50 to 60 FPS, delivering a great experience. The FPS counter proves how well it performs, even in action-packed scenes. For an even smoother experience, lowering the settings to medium can help maintain a locked 60 FPS. Next on the list is Resident Evil Revelation. The game runs well on my laptop with Intel UHD graphics, even at 1080p low settings. The FPS counter shows that it stays between 50 to 60 FPS, making it smooth and very playable. While the game looks slightly less detailed at low settings, the gameplay experience remains solid, with no major performance issues. For an even better balance, tweaking some settings like shadows and textures can help improve visuals while keeping high FPS. Next is Resident Evil Revelations 2, but unfortunately, this game struggles to run properly on my laptop. Even at 1080p low settings, the FPS remains very low, with frequent stutters, making it unplayable. The biggest issue is that CPU usage stays at 100%, while GPU usage remains low. This leads to constant frame drops and inconsistent performance. Lowering the resolution or tweaking some settings may help a little, but overall, this game is not well optimized for low-end hardware. Next is Resident Evil 6. On my laptop with Intel UHD graphics, the game runs at 50 to 60 FPS on 720p low settings. However, for recording, I locked the FPS to 40 for a more stable experience. The game plays smoothly overall, with only minor dips in intense action sequences. If you prefer higher FPS, playing without recording allows the game to stay between 50 to 60 FPS, making it very playable on low-end hardware.
Okay.
You see one of them, aim for the head. It's your best bet.
Got it.
This is where the reception was gonna be. They'd all be here eating dinner right now if...
You think anyone survived?
I hope so.
Next is Resident Evil 7. This game runs surprisingly well on my laptop at 720p low settings, maintaining a playable 40 to 50 FPS. Despite being a more modern Resident Evil game, it performs decently on low-end hardware. There are occasional frame drops, but overall, the gameplay remains smooth and immersive. I even completed the entire game on this setup, and while the visuals are scaled down, the horror experience remains intact. Next is Resident Evil 2 Remake. A visually stunning game that runs surprisingly well on my laptop. At 720p low settings, the game maintains a stable 30 to 40 FPS, making it fully playable. Even in intense combat situations, the FPS stays consistent, providing a smooth survival horror experience. There are occasional drops in heavily detailed areas, but overall, the game runs well without major issues. I even completed the entire game on this setup, and despite the lower settings, the atmosphere and tension remain immersive. If you're looking to play RE2 Remake on low-end hardware, it's definitely possible. Next is Resident Evil 3 Remake. Just like RE2 Remake, this game runs well on my laptop at 720p low settings, maintaining a stable 30 to 40 FPS. Even during intense action sequences and boss fights, the game remains playable without major frame drops. Some areas with high detail cause small dips, but overall, performance is smooth. I completed the entire game on this setup, and despite the lower settings, the fast-paced gameplay and horror elements still feel great. If you want to play RE3 Remake on low-end hardware, it's definitely possible. Next is Resident Evil Village. Which I was able to complete on this setup. The game runs at 720p with FSR on performance mode, delivering 20 to 30 FPS. While playable, it does require some quality sacrifices. In most areas, the game runs fine, but there are 3 specific locations where you have to lower the resolution below 720p, or else the game crashes. If you have more than 8 GB of RAM, you might not face this issue. Another thing to note is that the dialogues sometimes become out of sync, likely due to lower FPS. However, if you're desperate to play Resident Evil Village on a low-end PC, it is possible with adjustments. Ultimately, it's up to you whether the experience is worth it. Finally, we have Resident Evil 4 Remake. And honestly, I didn't expect it to even open on this setup, but it does. However, to enter the game, you have to scale down the resolution to 50% of 720p, and only after launching you can increase it back. I tested it at 720p with FSR set to performance, and while the game does run, there is noticeable input lag. FPS sometimes reaches 30 or even 40, but in intensive open areas, it suddenly drops to 20 FPS or lower. Another issue is crashes. The game crashes after about 15 minutes of playing, making it unstable. Just like Resident Evil Village, it's technically playable, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you're willing to sacrifice a lot of visuals. If you have a slightly better setup or more RAM, you might be able to play this game more smoothly. That's all for this video. Some Resident Evil games run great, some are playable with tweaks, and others struggle to run at all. If you have a low-end PC, you'll need to adjust settings for the best experience. Let me know in the comments which RE game you've tried on a low-end PC. And if this video helped, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.